Hi there. Welcome to episode 8 of the Cafe Genius Impresarios podcast. We are joined today by someone I think everybody knows or should. As I've been known to say recently, if ever there is a reboot or a rewrite of Atlas Shrugged set in Las Vegas, the question will not be who is John Galt, but do you know Jamie Schwartz? We are joined today by Jamie Schwartz. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. Quite an introduction. Appreciate
I
it.
try. Yeah, absolutely. But it is true, and I'm sure anybody listening to this will be nodding right now, like, "Yeah, I do." Everybody asks that. The other joke was going, or not a joke. That's serious. But I was talking to Jamie Schwartz the other day, and she asked me if I know Jamie Schwartz.
Ah, I know her. She would never ask you that.
Yeah, well, it must have been a doppelganger.
Oh,
So,
that's great.
so who is Jamie Schwartz anyway? Everybody talks about you, but I don't know if they really know you. I think you're certainly a John Galt-like character, connected in so many ways, but. Like you're a native, right? You're
I am.
of
Wow. I feel like there's so little intrigue about me because I'm pretty open, right? My story is one that I tell, but maybe just not telling it enough. I don't know. So I
well
am
when
a native, right?
but to interrupt, let me when new people come to town, they only know that they have to know you, but they
Oh,
don't know
that's all they
anything about
hear. They
you.
hear
There's
that. Okay.
some people have no idea. So yes, please continue. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, please. I am born and raised here. I went to UNLV, studied business for my undergrad, and then I went back and got my MBA in the business school. And so I'm a rebel through and through. But I only just came to work for UNLV a few years ago. Previous to that, I had been an entrepreneur for the majority of my career. The longest running and probably most successful business that I was part of and was able to found was called Affiliated Clinical Research, which is a pharmaceutical research trial management company. And that was very interesting. Learned a lot about the healthcare industry, which I wasn't a part of before that, and learned a lot about regulatory agencies and processes like that, and just how hard it is to have a successful, high growth company in an environment that's not necessarily supportive. So, healthcare industry, we know here, is a little bit lacking for infrastructure.
Sure.
And so, building that out was a challenge and a welcome challenge because we did pretty well at it, but it was a great educational experience for me. And then I went on into valuing companies, just kind of through professional colleagues of mine that were looking to have their medical practices valued, and they trusted me as a colleague. So we dove into it, and I realized I really enjoyed that work. So I opened a practice helping people understand the value of their company. And that led to helping people to change the value of their company because it's not very often that you do a valuation and you deliver a value range to a business owner that feels right to them. Most of the
Sure.
time,
Yeah.
they say they thought it was more, right? And so I had a little fun doing puzzle solving with folks and looking at what are the components of the value to their company and trying to move the needle for them based on some time horizon that they had in front of them and had so much fun doing that job. It was a great challenge. Lots of different exposures to different industries and other entrepreneurs in town. Commercial real estate exposure as part of buying and selling the businesses. So all of that has sort of culminated in what I'm now doing for the last few years, which is the director of industry and business engagement at the university, UNLV. And my job is really to find out how does UNLV better serve business and the organizations out there that also serve business, and how do we connect businesses with the university so that we can do important things like developing research or supporting them with R&D, making sure that we have interns and students that are available to fill the workforce needs,
Right.
right? So just trying to be a good partner in the ecosystem while also emphasizing developing new industries in this city. Because as we all know, economic diversification is really important and a goal that we're all looking to achieve. So
That's a
that's who I
compelling.
am, and that's what I'm working on right now.
All right, we're done. So no. Uh, so the so two interesting things. Well, several, but one. So when you this comes up all the time since time immemorial. How do I value my company and whatnot? So, and there's always a dollar figure, but how often in your travels, maybe because of that difference, maybe it's like, I thought it was worth more. Um, it, there's the cash value, but how do people consider, or how do you discuss like the value proposition? Like what am I doing for the community, the culture, the world that sometimes doesn't have a dollar attached to it, maybe?
Right. So there's different components of value, just the same way as there are different components of what somebody might consider success,
Sure.
right?
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
I
Absolutely.
would say that probably in an earlier stage company, the focus is on revenue building and building up what we typically associate with value, some quantifiable dollar value associated with the revenue of the business or the potential of the business. But as businesses mature, or as they start to think of forward events like either being acquired by someone else or potentially passing the company on to employees as the original owner retires, and then they maybe have an employee participation program, those other richer goodwill type of value adds become more important because that's what differentiates your company, right,
Sure.
from others. And it's also how you can attract the right kind of talent to your organization because you share values and principles, and hopefully that is that's a recipe for a lasting relationship with your team. So, although I do think it should be something people think about from the origin of the company,
Right.
exactly
Yeah.
for the reason I just talked about, because you
Right.
you find like-minded people to come do business together, whether that's working for you or your customers, and usually that translates to success. So I do try to encourage that, but just I think the natural tendency is to compartmentalize and prioritize, right, where you're at right now.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, that's business. That's business 101 probably. But yeah, I think there's often like a disconnect, or just in my experience, there's a disconnect between my perception of what I'm doing and how others might explicitly value it or implicitly just, and so, yeah, that's interesting that you focus on that. I think it's something that doesn't often get attention until later, maybe. And then,
Hmm.
like, how come I can't get the valuation I need to complete my runway? And then you're like, well, because you haven't established the value for others to see. I mean, yeah, I think it's a complicated thing. So
Yeah,
that's
and,
another
and,
thing.
and and also value is in the eye of the beholder
Oh,
too, a
yeah,
bit,
yeah.
right?
And that is the
So,
marketplace. Yeah, absolutely.
exactly. And so that's something that spent a lot of time working with clients on to understand, well, who's your audience? Who are you trying to convince of a value, right? If it's a company buying you up, then you're looking at ways that you can efficiently merge into their company, and those are different value points than, let's say, a mom and pop Main Street business that's selling so that it can become just a standard income producer for them. They're going to value that much differently. So definitely depends on the audience.
Absolutely. And that is underpins the entire access to capital thing, which we'll get to later. So, and the other thing you said was the puzzle pieces. By the way, do you know the difference between a puzzle and a mystery?
Oh, no. What is it?
I hadn't really thought about this, but what's the author's name? Malcolm Gladwell had
Oh, yeah.
a piece on this. And he goes, I'm going to paraphrase or simplify what he said. A puzzle, you converge on a solution, right? Every time you put a piece in, you're getting closer to the end because you're going to have a completed picture or whatever it is. Puzzle has an endpoint. A mystery, you may be getting more information that leads you away from the ending or the solution or the perpetrator or whatever. So a mystery may or may not converge. Probably it may not,
Hmm.
right? But a puzzle converges on the solution. I was like, I never really thought about that. It's already complicated versus complex
It is. I
versus a little
definitely then
subtly.
prefer a puzzle then.
Yeah,
I like to be able to come to resolution.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, sometimes a mystery is just bad planning. Maybe I don't know. But yeah, I think so. Because I tend to think in systems, and I will often get like, "Oh, that's too many things." And I said, "Well, they're not tightly coupled. They don't all have to happen, but they do all connect to each other." And I was showing your colleague Zach, who has recently returned to UNLV, Zach Miles,
Yeah.
my list of things, and Grace also from UNR. They were sitting at lunchtime at Tech Alley. So I was showing him I'd written down several things, and it probably looks overwhelming, but when you think in terms of pieces fitting together and whatnot, it's like, no, this all makes sense to me. So, of course, it has no value, but ideas rarely do, right? So, implementation.
Thank goodness for infographics now to help us express
Yeah,
ourselves.
I have no such talent. So, if I could just hand wave all day, that'd be wonderful. So let's. Oh, by the way, I have asked this of people in who grew up in Vegas, because I think you obviously you've grew up here, so you don't necessarily know the other case, but so I like, you grew up in Vegas. What is it like as a teenager? You don't have to say when that was, but so figure what, 10 years ago. What is it like? And I've lived in Vegas 10 years, by the way. What is it like? Like, what was the first concert you went to? It's got, because you basically have a selection of any, right?
Yeah, well, there are a lot more concerts that show up here than did when I was a kid. I
Okay.
mean,
Okay.
this city has become quite a mecca of entertainment, and when I was a kid, I would say that the offerings weren't quite so robust, and they were a
Okay.
little more geared toward an adult audience than toward, anything that we would have been able to see.
Sure.
But my first concert, I think it was New Kids on the Block, which is a little embarrassing, at the Thomas and Mack back in the day. We went to a lot of concerts over there.
Hanging
Um,
tough. Hanging tough.
Hanging
Was that a,
Tough. Yeah,
yeah?
exactly. I think maybe Debbie Gibson or Tiffany or somebody like that was the opener. So that does reveal my age a little bit there,
Yeah.
but
Does Debbie Gibson live here?
I don't know. Does she?
Somebody, I can't remember her name. Somebody in local media is best buddies with her.
Oh, well,
So they appear on Twitter or something.
well,
But yeah,
fun.
my first concert was U2 Joshua Tree.
Awesome.
It was in Tempe, Arizona. But yeah, and by the way, I played a New Kids CD in my in college. I played it on. We had outdoor speakers because that's what we did back then. Engineering students would build outdoor speakers, and I played. It was yeah, it was hanging top. So it was the and then the moment that started playing, there was a gathering of people that showed up at my door. They kidnapped me and stuck my head in the toilet. So
Oh.
there were no New Kids fans.
So you don't have a positive association with New Kids on the Block then?
Well, maybe I enjoyed the toilet. I don't know,
Oh, that's so
but
funny.
it was good times. Well, we had that was our whirling tradition, so it was always in fun. It was not.
Once I was a teenager, though, the Huntridge was still, a happening place back then. So I remember a great Halloween concert that was Radiohead and Dramarama, Tears for Fears. That was awesome. That's different. It was different back when I was younger. The city was smaller. Um, it felt a little more approachable to, for some of those local venues. So we enjoyed that a whole lot back then, the Huntridge, which is coming back now.
It
So I'm
is.
excited to
It
see
is.
what the new version of that will be.
Yeah, Jay Dapper is making that place what is old is new again. What was old?
Right?
Yeah, I got to talk to him at some point. I was almost going to go there for the lighting of the theater sign, but I couldn't get down there. The old new theater, and he opened that. Sorry, listeners, if you're not from around here, this is local stuff, but yeah, it's cool. Huntridge is a place where everybody hangs out after work. So all the bartender friends I've had here, they're like, "Yeah, you want to go to the Huntridge and hang out?" And sure. So yeah, good times. And also, well, yeah, now we're kind of going off my notes here, but when I was here for Comdex, you remember that?
Yes.
That was a
Wow.
long time ago.
Was.
So we stayed at the Treasure Island, now TI. They had pirate ships in front of it. I know that's crazy,
Hmm.
right? And and we walked from Treasure Island to the convention center and back every day for a week. Now that's not itself interesting, but there was like nothing. It was like dirt fields, or I mean, it's just sort of weird to think. I'm not saying the entire place was dirt fields, but it just seemed like it was not quite. Well, it definitely wasn't the way it is now. And so my memory of that time was it was all about being at the show, of course, Comdex. And here's okay, fun fact, since we're way off my notes now. Tell me if this sounds familiar. We were at the time I worked for UMass Computer Corporation in Santa Clara and Fremont, California. The Oakland Coliseum was looking for a company to sponsor and so rename where the Raiders and the A's played. And so it was to be the UMax Coliseum. And I still have a t-shirt somewhere that says UMax Coliseum. We saw a game there in a box. It was the Dolphins versus the Raiders. And then when we had our show at Comdex, our whole theme was like Raider, like shirts and shorts. Like we were, at a gym or working out. We had an AstroTurf booth, and we had 4 Raiderettes that would do a show every 30 minutes. Does any of that sound familiar?
Yeah,
Anybody listening?
that's amazing. Wow. So now you've seen that happen twice.
Yeah, I'm like, I think I've read this story. I don't know. Hopefully the ending will be better this time. And well, so back then it was the Joint Powers Group or something. They basically screwed up the whole deal because of the A's. So we'll see how this turns out this time. The
Yeah.
A's threw a wrench and everything. So anyway, well, good times. Vegas has certainly been an interesting place for 10 years. I can only imagine for the 21 or 22 years you've been here. So
No, you know what? I don't mind telling people, because it is what it is, that when I was born in the late 70s, there were less than 500,000 people here in the Southern Nevada area.
and
And
now
now
there's
we are, I think the last figure I heard for the greater Las Vegas region, we're close to 2.8 million. So
yeah, I think the city proper is around 600, and then the entire metro area, as you say. So yep, a lot of people.
yeah, incredible growth in 4 decades, really. The type of growth that other cities have taken hundreds of years to achieve. I mean, obviously we're a newer city than that, but just the pace of the growth of this town has always been pretty astounding and remarkable, and it continues to boom.
It does. We just need some water, and this is a topic for a completely different discussion some other time with a water expert. And Nevada does lead the way on water conservation, so I'm not commenting on that. But I'm almost concerned that the recent storms and the snowpack and the Colorado River will feed, like it's going to solve, quote unquote, solve temporarily. So there will be we have no problem. And I hope that is not the case. I hope we continue to look at how we make the most, because this is a desert. I grew up in Phoenix myself, so
Yep.
I watch people watering the sidewalk, and you're like, what is going on here? This is a desert. And they're like, we got plenty of water. So that's the wrong attitude to have when you get down to the bottom, and then you're like, well, we don't. Now we don't. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But anyway, we can talk about water all day. But
Yeah.
by the way, anybody who visiting, bring your own water, please, and leave it. So that is a totally different topic. We'll definitely talk about it another time. The code name, bring your own water. So let us talk of the Genius Roundtable, which I will probably refer to. We're looking at our entrepreneurial ecosystem. And so I would obviously like to hear what you have to say or what you think of. So to begin with, if I say entrepreneurial ecosystem, what comes to mind?
Well, I think about the obviously small business owners from a mature standpoint to a startup standpoint, an early stage, and what are the support and resources available, and what's the education uh, resources that are available that all exists in the ecosystem, but also mentorship, experienced entrepreneurs and business folks who are giving back into the business environment by helping and advising those who are coming up next, and providing a roadmap of sorts, right, for people. So I think all of those things are part of what make up the ecosystem, and our ecosystem specifically.
I mostly agree. This is not really something to argue about. It's an elephant, right? Which part of the
Yeah,
elephant are
right.
you? So I had the good fortune, I think, when I first moved here 10 years ago, the downtown project was sort of blooming. It had been kind of booting up, if you will, but it was just starting to make a splash, or however you want to look at it. And so I had an opportunity to attend their downtown lowdown in, I think it was February of 2014, maybe. And Bambi Francisco from Oakland, she's her media company Vader, I believe it is Vader Media.
Mm.
She was driving a smart city program in Oakland, and she had a lot of interesting comments. So she came and she made a presentation, and I was in the room. So there's a YouTube video that I will place a link in our show notes wherever you're consuming this podcast. It's a YouTube video from 2014, and she had 8 things and I have somewhere along the line simplified it to 4 because that's what I do. And so the 4 things that I throw around as if they were poker chips is education and a talent pool. So obviously where you work right now is an important component of that, and the talent pool comes not only from education but also people who come here. But if I just loop those into people available to do things that they know what they're doing. And by the way, not everything is tech, so I'm not not everybody has to be an engineer, although you should be. Uh, some people want to do medical silliness or what. No, I'm just no. Actually, I could have been a doctor. I could have been a contender, but I could have been a doctor if it were not for my. I do not care for blood, especially my own. But
Yeah,
seeing
that's a tough squeamishness to have if you want to be a doctor.
exactly. So I think I got over it eventually, but certainly I would not go to medical school now, unless you know of a medical school I could get into. So education and talent pool, the the interlinked communities. It's important to realize communities are not just something you sprinkle on top of the ice cream and you get a community out of it. They're communities that emerge. They're not always linked together. An example I use in an ecosystem, you might have the flower community and the bee community, and they hopefully find each other. So communities that do talk and interact, and they have different focal areas. The veterans community here, for example, is one. They're very tightly knit and they are very supportive, not necessarily communicative, which is something we're trying to change. Government facilitation. So there should be regulations and infrastructure that, obviously, for example, the fiber stuff that Michael E. Sherwood is driving. We'll have we'll have the fastest internet on the planet, not only in enterprise at the switch, but throughout the city. And access to capital, which is always a 3-letter word that is on the lips of everyone. So those are the components that I throw around as our ecosystem essentials. And so of those, or of your list, how do you think we stack up? Like, what do we have? What are we missing?
Well, I mean, first, I think it's most important to say that every month, I think it's expanding, and there's more and more robust uh, additions to our ecosystems, which is good. And I think that's intentional, right? And we're welcoming it, and we're working hard to attract it to come here, or to be, grown up and born out of something, that a project or some other funding that's available to us right now. So I want to start by saying that, because I feel like sometimes when we start by talking about what are the gaps in the ecosystem, we fail to recognize that we are real time running toward the solutions, right? So that I think is first and foremost to say. We Probably the most obvious gaps that we have right now, I would say, are in mentor resourcing and capital funding. Those would be, I think, that the two biggest areas, because I think there's the education system, the university, our Office of Economic Development, several incubators that exist now in town, the city of Las Vegas. All of these entities have come together. There are workshops galore on how to start a business, what kind of licensing do you need, and those sort of procedural and process type of startup questions. You can find that in abundance, resources for those things. Um, and you can find also a lot of people who want to help you to find capital, right? So there's a lot of capital advisors who are popping up around, which is very helpful. If you're not familiar with the landscape and how to navigate, where do you even begin to find funding for a business at an
Right.
early stage? But there's still the same result, which is that there's only so much early stage funding out there to be had. So I'm really pleased to see what the state is doing by offering incentive programs. Battleborn Venture has the SSBCI funding program that is available. So we're looking to offer attractive and competitive programs. Um, and then, of course, we're attracting accelerators, VCs, angel funders as best we can. The university is actually, out of my office, we are currently planning and in the very beginning building stages of a university-led venture capital fund. Our goal at this point is $50 million as the raise,
Great.
and we feel a lot of strong support from some of the um, longtime community benefactors and folks that have been instrumental to kind of laying the foundation for the elevation of the city, like people who built cultural centers and things like that. So we went to them first. They also sit on the boards for UNLV and our research foundation, and wanted to understand if they would be supportive, and they are. And the consensus is this is finally the right time to do it. So I'm feeling encouraged about some of those robust action plans that we have and that we're all going toward right now, while also recognizing today there may not be as much angel and pre-seed funding as we need to really elevate the deal flow volume here. But we're working on it. And I expect that within a year's period of time, we will have greatly improved access to capital in Southern Nevada.
Well, excuse me. I've kind of heard the opposite as far like angel and seed and angel and maybe even A round people. The the sort of opaque people say, I'm not really going to qualify or quantify that, but people say, oh, it's not so difficult to get 50, 100, a million, but it's the B, the C, and it's the planning, the roadmap. And this, I mean, this came up in the downtown project timeframe was, once you got to a level from Vegas Tech Fund and other local funding sources where you were getting interest from outside, it was the string attached was pulling you to Sand Hill Road or to other places
Yeah.
outside of Vegas. And so at the time, the downtown project was basically an incubator itself. And this is something I've chatted with Tyler Williams a little bit about, and we'll talk more about, I hope. And we're doing a downtown project retrospective to try to capture some of those, look back and see what components worked and what didn't. And so the capital component, obviously, what made you not stay here if you did leave? And one of the founders of a startup, Rummager, his name is Dylan Bathurst, is in the first group, like the early adopters of the retrospective, so we can start to get the word out organically. So he was one of those cases where he received funding or whatever the deal was. We'll find out from him, and he left. So essentially, graduation from downtown project included a real exit. Yeah, so that's not necessarily healthy for the future of the local economy if people get funding and depart. So a question I have been asking recently is why? Okay, if it's true, and really getting to the bottom line is one of the challenges. If it's true that access to capital, larger numbers like access to capital could mean $1 or $1 billion, right? So somewhere in there, there's a cutoff where people are not able to access funds locally. Why is that? So and I agree to your point, I agree now it's a very different landscape. Just as I said to Zach, and I said here earlier, if we did the clinic idea here now with the SBIR funding grants and other possibilities, some of the resources you have and the attitude in general and the sort of awareness of how that fits into the picture, I think it would have been a very different experience, and we would not have been rolling our eyes, which would have been nice. But but what is it about, like, what if there is a problem with access to capital, why, with all the things that you just mentioned, and there are a lot of positives, and there's a lot to be optimistic about, but what do you suppose might be? You don't have to answer this like with a definitive solution. It's a mystery, perhaps. Why is there no capital? Why are people not rushing in with $150 million funds? And this is going to be the next thing. That was a really long question. So if you want to take a moment.
Oh no, I mean, I think there's probably a complex set of factors that are affecting that, right? But from just a super basic standpoint, it's timing, right? We didn't have a lot of deal flow coming up through Vegas because everything takes time to catch up. First, we had to build enough infrastructure and resources, and then we had to have a critical mass of creativity and desire to be innovative, and that entrepreneurial push, that demand from entrepreneurs has reached the volume that it has needed to, right, in audibility, right, so that everybody can hear this is what we need. And there just weren't enough people doing it before. COVID, I think, was as horrible as it was for Southern Nevada. There's some silver linings to be found. And one of them is that you had an incredibly creative group of people who had time and some funding available to imagine these creative ideas that they hadn't necessarily been able to focus on before. So it gave everybody this opportunity to think of those things, and that was a catalyst to all sorts of entrepreneurial activity, because as you know, it's sort of a snowball effect. It's contagious, and
Sure.
also one idea sparks another idea, and now all of a sudden you've brought the whole gang along. So some of that's happening, right? It's just we had to build up enough deal flow, enough activity to even catch the attention of these
Mhm.
larger funding groups, because they didn't even realize we were on the map. But we've been doing a great job of letting them know that we're here and we're busy. And I'm sure you saw this last weekend that the Review Journal, which is our local paper here, uh, noted that, well, controlling for a few things like established markets and so on, Las Vegas has now reached a number one status for early stage high growth companies to
Right.
start up.
It's on my
Business,
list. We'll get to
right?
that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then that's because there's just been an abundance of resources and funding that have come to rest around entrepreneurs in this valley and trying to support them. There's a lot of data out there that shows that startup activity is one of the best ways to diversify an economy. Um, and we certainly feel like, as a university, that we play a very important role in that space, because we can help to de-risk industry entering our market. So if an industry is not already present here, or doesn't have a heavy presence, sometimes that can be uh, a prohibiting factor from entering that market, right? Just doesn't make financial sense for a company to do that. But
Right.
if the university comes in with some of the resources that we can provide through research and development, maybe being a part of the research and technology park landscape and all of the networking opportunities that exist there, hiring the student interns, working with the teams that are on campus to further the business, that creates a new environment. And um, you know, we see that as an opportunity to entice industries that the rest of the community wants to see blossom here, and we can help do that.
Yes. Oh, yeah. So when I when I moved here again in 2013, it was the good old days. I moved here after a house fire, by the way, in case anyone's curious. So seemed like going to Vegas made the most sense after all my stuff was burned up. So that was fun. But I moved here, and so at the time, again, the downtown project was just sort of blossoming, and there were several issues that I noticed immediately, that they were very insular, almost isolationist. Like, if you're not in the downtown project, we're not so concerned with what you're doing, and that was, I heard those words exactly. So I think that was one of the shortcomings as an observer, as a spectator, as I was, that we'll talk about in our retrospective timeline, which will be all year probably, and longer. But something I found was there was just people were not looking to they weren't looking to UNLV. They weren't bringing employees in. So the importance of your educational base cannot be ignored, certainly, and should not be undervalued. And I think it was drastically when the clinic idea. I don't know who came up with that crazy idea, but the when we did that, the thing that I was hearing from the UNLV side was, we reached out to downtown, they didn't answer the phone, and so there was a disconnect there. So I also agree that the value of the education, that's where you get, you know, every year you have an 18-year pipeline of or more, or 22, or whatever, however long people do. You have this pipeline of talent that's supposed to be entering your economy, and hopefully they stick around. So when I moved here, not only was I, why did you move from Silicon Valley to here? Tell me more about this. That was a little bit notoriety. Then I'm suddenly the only Intel employee in Nevada. That was a little bit more notoriety. And then U.S. News published an article, uh, and I've tried to find it. I couldn't find it, so you'll have to take my word for it, if you will. The three academic institutions that enabled Silicon Valley: Stanford, obviously, Berkeley, and Harvey Mudd College in LA, where I went, where I
Yeah.
graduated. And I was like, "What? Who wrote this article? What's this silliness?" And so suddenly, there. Didn't you go to Harvey Mudd? Yeah, I did. I graduated 1,000 years ago. But the importance of the academic pipeline cannot be understated. And so hopefully, and so at the time, like I said, there was not a recognition of this locally. It was move your entrepreneurial venture here, start your company, and then leave the chance. And the reason then that I talked to Rama at the engineering college, the whole reason that started was because of I ran into Peter Tomasic and Scott Giovanni, his co-founder of the before influential. I can't remember the name of that startup. We were at a launch party. They walked up to me and said, "Hey, you're here from Silicon Valley. Where do we hire people from?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's funny. They're only inviting founders to come here. They're not. There's no employees." So that was a challenge, and that was one way to address it. Um, but yeah, so the university is where you begin research. It's where you begin. That's where Silicon Valley began, right? People think you can't go to Plug and Play or to Facebook campus and think, "Oh, okay, this is Silicon Valley." Silicon Valley started in 1950 or so. Stanford professor. He was a radar expert. He got government contracts. He invited Shockley to move closer to his mom, started Shockley Semiconductor. That's where the silicon comes from. So all kinds of stuff took a long time to take place. And
Yeah.
it all started with academia and research.
So many things have started there. I mean,
yeah,
it's it's something that I'm not sure a lot of people really have put a lot of thought into, right? Where's the origin of whatever X product or technology? And the truth is that it's very expensive and time consuming to do
yes.
research and development, and a lot of times it fails, right?
Right.
Right. That's why it's
Yeah,
research.
I was about to say, yeah, people don't think about that. Why is it so expensive? Well, because you're seeing the thousandth version of it.
Exactly. And companies a lot of times they're not going to see the benefit of putting that much money into R&D for an uncertain outcome.
Right.
So
Yep.
the beauty of working with a research and development team at a university is they're bearing a lot of that risk. And that's what I was referring to earlier when I said we can sort of de-risk
Right.
the entry to market from some of these other industries, because we can reduce the cost, the expense, we can provide workforce and talent and sort of build up a proper support infrastructure and ecosystem around that entity, that sector that we're wanting to invite to the community. And actually, that's something that we're doing in June. The university is leading a delegation to Boston for the Bio International Convention that is going to be there June 5th through the 8th. And we have got participants coming from the city of Las Vegas, from Clark County, from LVGEA, from the city of North Las Vegas. The city of Henderson has contributed some information and material as well. GoEd is very supportive. GoEd is Governor's Office of Economic Development, for those that don't know. And this is a really exciting prospect for us because, as you are probably aware, the biotech, biomanufacturing, this is not a robust industry here, but we do feel that we have capacity to increase that
Right.
sector exponentially. There's high paying jobs, there's great opportunity pathways for the students as they graduate, and there are enormous innovation opportunities, right, for building startups and new technology in
Absolutely.
that space. And there's opportunities where we can be in the bio space that don't consume a ton of water, right? Because we're not probably talking about pharmaceutical manufacturing, but other places that we can thrive. And so we've gathered up the troops, right? And we're going on this big delegation visit. We've got a booth, and we've got appointments that we're making with various companies that we are as a whole trying to attract to the region. And the reason that's so important is because every time I'm talking, when I go to these different visits and talk to these teams who've built out research parks or new industries in their communities, what the feedback I've heard is that it doesn't so much matter that you have everything in place for your infrastructure and your resources around a given sector. What matters a whole lot is how accessible are all of the community resources to make things happen. Everything from community leaders to funding resources, right? And how accessible is everybody, and then how flexible is everyone. And so for the entire team to show up, and then as we meet with whatever XYZ company or organization and talk about why to come to Southern Nevada to do business, we can all make a great case. And we can also all come up with uh, impromptu or bespoke solutions. And that's really important because not every industry or company needs the same thing. So we can develop ad hoc workforce solutions and training programs and
Right.
build up supply chains potentially with other small businesses around them and things like that. And that's the kind of collaboration that is necessary to advance the community as a whole, and we're doing our best to live up to our charge as part of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not. My tone is not suggesting I don't agree with that. So these are good things. My concern, which I raise a lot, which is why I'm doing a lot of the things I'm doing. The Genius Roundtable, for example, is actual entrepreneurs on the ground. As I say, they're actually here. Local entrepreneurs doing entrepreneur. Been there. No, they are there, and they're doing that, and they are wearing the T-shirt, so to speak. And so the listing of luminaries you just mentioned from various agencies and whatnot, I always used to say, describe a smart city, and people listed off the infrastructure and the sensors and the data and whatnot. I said, what about the important part? And they're like, what? I said, the people. Oh yeah, the people. So I didn't hear which entrepreneurs are joining the delegation, or do they all work for agencies and government and so my point is
There are seven local bio-related companies that are also attending this conference that
okay,
we are reaching out to make sure we're properly representing them, and then as well as larger organizations. So, for instance, Intermountain Healthcare has made a huge impact on our community coming in, and especially if you've had the chance to see the Raiders headquarters and the performance training center over there. Intermountain is really interested in working with UNLV on sports performance medicine and so sports training, injury recovery, things like that. And then we're also doing brain research focus. So we've got a couple of innovators that are building out AI platformed care technology solutions. And so we'll be talking about some of those things. So we definitely are going to present some of the best of what we have
sure,
developed in that space and show that off. And then we're also out there looking to attract these larger companies that will come here to set up shop and hopefully provide jobs for folks. So it's kind of actually really a three-pronged approach. So the three targets of this mission for us are to attract startups that would be compatible with the Valley here, to attract larger companies to come to the Valley and be an employer, right? And then the third priority is to find funders, investors, private equity firms, VCs, and so
access to
on
capital,
to
access to
come
capital.
here and help us fund what we are sparking off down here.
Yes, yes, I would like some capital too. By the way, if anybody wants to. Yeah. So yeah, those see all these are good things, but the whole reason for the roundtable and the thing that I ask now and then is like, not there's a certain set of questions or concerns or gaps that are not like if you hear that the city is doing something or that the LVGA is driving something and you're like, that doesn't really sound like it's filling the actual need, like based on my, me as not me, but me, our fictitious character, on the ground. Like, I wish they would do this other thing, and so part of what our effort is around is amplifying that or figuring it out. Like, our three key areas are the ecosystem itself, like typifying it. What is it? What isn't it? What do we have? What do we need? That kind of thing. Some metrics by which to actually measure those things, so we can be consistent in that assessment, and then a strategy to address the things that may be missing. So our strategy is to try to include actual entrepreneurs, not to discount the other people who are not quote unquote actual entrepreneurs. But I think there's just a different viewpoint sometimes that is worth raising or elevating or surfacing, if you will. So that's part. And then to your point much earlier about mentorship here, um, I've talked about this a couple times with you, also with the Startup Resource Center idea that we have. which we are continuing to advance on, is literally when you just get here, what do I do? Where do I start? And some of the things you talked about literally don't show up on people's radar, so they don't even know what they don't know. So hopefully
Right.
that will be an interesting, and part of what we hope to extract from this roundtable effort and some of our engagements is a collection or a cadre of entrepreneurs and residents that are actually in our ecosystem. So they could be somebody who started a restaurant or a food truck, or it could be somebody who started a tech company or a bio, it could be anything, and a collection of skills and background that they know what you have to do when you get here and how to make things happen and whatnot. Because I think some of that's left to chance. And this was something I found and observed and heard about anecdotally and contemporaneously about the downtown project. Was they told me there'd be some sort of guidance or mentorship. I don't know where to go. And the answer was always just go out and drink some Fernet and you'll be fine. So that's not true. It is funny, but it was this, the real story was just go run into people at the parties and the outings and so on. And so I think part of the big picture that you've drawn and described has to include that bootstrap or the first contact, or I call it the last mile. Um, you get to town, hey, they told me to move my company here. Now what? And
Yeah.
it is often, and somebody we're working with whom I believe you have not met, but we were at Blackfire yesterday. Today is, by the way, the 21st of April. So it was 420. That's why you weren't there. Um,
I was there all day.
I'm, well, the joke doesn't work if you were there. Come on. But the, we were there with a newcomer to Vegas. He moved here from Austin, Ezekiel.
Oh
I'll
yeah.
have him on the show sometime. But so Ezekiel moved here in December, and he said exactly, he's our prototype, really. He's like, when I got here, people would say, "Oh, you got to talk to so and so," and clearly you were on that list, right? Oh, do you know Jamie Schwartz? And he's like, "Who? I don't even know where I'm. Am I in Las Vegas right now?" And you're like, "No, actually, you're not. You're in unincorporated Clark County. Like nobody knows that, even that." So
Right.
he, as a newcomer, so we've had a really interesting conversation as we get this the Startup Resource Center, which is Source. If you're a nerd, Source SRC, inspired by the user lib of the Downtown Project Day. So this will be /Vegas/local/source is our working name. But yeah, so he said I had exactly the same questions that you're talking about, and so when you focus on the assuming that, oh, just go to talk to SBDC and score, there's a whole collection of people who are like, I don't even know what those letters mean. Like, and not to
Right.
detract from their not, but they just are. They're sort of dropped in with a lot of assumptions of familiarity, which is lacking. So hopefully the SRC will be, like I said, that last mile to get you up and running. Everything from who should I talk to who is this Jamie Schwartz character to what is Tech Alley, what all that. I have talked to people who have lived here for several years, still have no idea what First Friday is. By the way, it's a date on a calendar, not a place. But the First Friday event that goes on, it's fairly large. Can't really miss it. Parking is horrible, but there are people that don't even know what that is, and it is a nice social gathering. Much less Tech Alley and some of the other
Yeah.
meetups and all the
Well,
resources you said, the classes, the seminars, the how to start a business, how to do. They have no idea, and they don't even know where to look. And there are places to look. So
there are, but I can say, like, kind of in defense of that we're a big city, like Phoenix is geographically, right? Like very spread out suburban sprawl. And if
yes,
you don't spend time kind of in the city center itself, in the heart of the activity, and in, I mean, frankly, the arts district, right? The arts now slash tech district, um, you probably won't know all of the things that are going on unless you're actively seeking it out. And so one thing that is true of a city like ours, where everyone's not centrally located, and we're too big to be, kind of a small community where word just gets around, is it's, it, there's a responsibility that the entrepreneurs have to also look for the guidance, right? So everybody's got to be trying to find each other. But that said, I ran business and then obviously business consulting with my evaluation firm for over 20 years in this city, running business advisement, really, and never heard of what SBDC was, Small Business Development Center, which, by the
right.
way, for those of you on the audience that haven't heard of it, it's a federal program created in the late 70s by an act of Congress. and every single state in the union has an SBDC assigned to it. Most communities have an SBDC advisor assigned to them. And this is a network of professional business advisors that can offer consulting advice to entrepreneurs who have fewer than 500 employees and less than 50 million in revenue, which is the vast majority of businesses, not only across the country, but certainly in Southern Nevada. And whether you're a startup and a high growth company and you consider yourself like a tech company, or whether you consider yourself a mom and pop income producing company like a dry cleaner or a restaurant, something like this, we have an avenue and a path for people to have advice on how to get started, everything from licensing, building your business plan, finding capital, building out a marketing plan. How do you design a logo for your company, and how do you put your website up? What's the right way to do social media marketing for your particular industry and the audience you're trying to reach? Because there are methodologies, right, for all of those things. If you're a restaurant, you're certainly going to advertise differently than if you are an accounting firm that's trying to do a little more B2B type of business.
Yep.
All of those things we can provide guidance and advice to. And again, it's free and it's confidential. And it is the worst secret that we have that this exists, right? It shouldn't be a secret.
I keep tripping over this thing. What is it? SBDC? I don't even know what that is.
So just so everybody knows, it's nevadasbdc.org, and just click the button that says request an advisor. We don't share any information with others. It doesn't get shared with the SBA, although the SBA funds the program. They don't have access to any of the business information in there, not the IRS, not anyone. So it really is a safe place to get great advice. And then not only that, but then they serve as a connection to all the resources. So they're a bit of a tip of the spear for someone who comes into the Valley. If you know about it, it's an enormous resource because we connect you to the workforce groups, right? The high tech groups, where
Sure.
development groups, workshops, education, mentors, all the things that we're talking about today. There's a lot of that's offered through SBDC. So I think we really need to do a better job of making sure people know about it. We certainly have hired some of the best that this team has ever had down here in Southern Nevada to help the entrepreneurs here. And now it's just a matter of making sure more people know about it.
Yes. And, but in defense of our SRC notion, I spoke
Sure.
to, yeah, well,
I think
everything.
I think it's a natural addition to the
Yeah,
small
yeah,
business
it's a
program
totally
for sure.
collaborative. I've said, like, this not like competing, it's totally 100% collaboration, but
Yeah.
the end goal is the OKR, the objective and key result is to make our ecosystem stronger so that when people get here, they're not wandering around wondering who Jamie is and what is this SB what thing.
No,
And
right?
it's
People should,
literally,
and that's too bad because people should not always be looking for me
yeah, no,
specifically. I mean, I'm happy to help anybody, but I'm just one person, and there are a huge
exactly.
team of people who can be helpful. So, yeah,
And
I definitely have to work very hard to
diversify.
dispel the myth that I'm the answer to a lot of things, because I don't want to be, and I'm not trying to be all the things to all the people. I definitely am a big believer in letting all the other resources do their best work for everyone, right?
Right. Right. And so, yeah, the goal is to basically have an interface to getting here, the onboarding part, right? Just so you have,
Yeah.
you have any idea what questions to ask.
Right.
I'm not a big Donald Rumsfeld fan. Any of the kids out there, you won't know what I'm talking about, but he had that famous quote, like, there are known knowns and known unknowns and unknown unknowns.
Yeah.
And you have to, but that's true, right? When you first get to a new
Yes.
city, and the SRC is inspired by, I was in Eindhoven, Holland one time, which is also a nice kind of a startup slash, they converted the Philips NatLab. I used to work for Philips, so I've been there a couple times. I used to work for all companies, by the way. If anybody looks at my resume, you're like, holy crap. But when I worked for Philips, I went to Eindhoven. I've been there after Philips. I was there my most recent international travel was to Eindhoven. So they had an expat center. You could literally, I was 2 blocks away. I walked by it. Like, what is this? You walk in, there's meeting spaces. There's a bar downstairs. There's multiple language resources, right? Because the Dutch speak all of the languages anyway. So you could walk in there and they're like, hey, you're new to Eindhoven. Here's where you start. We have gatherings of people from America or from China or wherever, right? So to me, that was like, that's an entryway for somebody new to the area. And here, I mean, this is anecdotal still, but every person I've talked to when they get here, they're like, I just got here. I just moved here. I've lived here for a year or 2 years. They still don't know where to look, who to talk to, and I keep referring to, do you know Jamie Schwartz? But the fact is, you are absolutely correct. You cannot rely on knowing a name like Josh Levitt or Jamie Schwartz. You have to. There has to be, in a smart city, there has to be a way to just go, oh yes, I I know how to reach this wealth of resources before me. I don't have to rely on knowing the right name and which coffee shop to be in, right?
Exactly.
So I call it discovery, right? Being able to discover, um, any software engineers out there, you know how that works with service discovery and microservices. So the same idea, right? Like I'm looking for this, and it should almost come at you by default, rather than having to spelunk around. Like, oh, I googled for. I just keep seeing Jamie something. I don't know who this is. So and I know that joke gets old, but no, it doesn't. It's fine. It's always funny. There's there's there are people like you that are essential, but yes, you don't scale. Jamie does not scale. She does not answer 1,000 emails a day. That's what 1,000 people have told me. So they're all jokes. They're all jokes, folks. Uh, but you cannot rely on people when we live in an age. I worked at Netscape. I know how the internet works, and we have all these resources. It's a matter of interface and being discoverable, I think. So that's what we're pursuing.
Yeah.
So let's touch on that headline, because we're already just about to an hour, and I know you're busy, so I don't want to. I don't. Do we have a hard cutoff or anything, or?
I don't have a hard cutoff. No, I scheduled a little over so we could chat.
Oh, very good. Um, so the number one thing, the pre-IPO, so that you said there was some controlling for that. I think it's important for a reasonable state. It's important to know that it's number one of, as you said, they removed certain. So there's no Silicon Valley or
Right.
Austin or Los. So it's. I say this with the utmost respect. We're number one of the second tier.
Right.
So if you're a Jerry Seinfeld fan, silver medal is the first of all the people who didn't win. So that's being overly mean, but I like that joke is funny to me. So, but it's important to realize that we cannot. There's not a time for celebration. It's a time for recognition. But we're done. We did it. We're number one, right? That's not exactly true. So I think the headlines will be,
Yes, right. We haven't arrived at a destination.
yeah, we're doing good in the first quarter of the race, right? So we're
Yes.
leading. Um, I think there's a little some existentialism that we have to get over in the ecosystem, as I described how we're actually looking at it. So I think there's a little bit of like I refer to the stag hunt, if you're a game theorist at all. Anybody out there? Um, so are you familiar with the assurance game or the stag hunt?
Yeah, sure. Right.
So I think there is a tendency culturally to be a little bit self. I'm not going to say selfish, but personal goals first, or my startup. I'm not necessarily going to be altruistic. I'll be a little bit more individualist. So my Atlas Shrugged reference maybe have been more pointed. But the thing I'm concerned with is that the tendency that I'm seeing in the last 10 years, that and you have suggested that there is more collaboration going on here, which is good and I think essential. But I think on the ground, day to day, it's more about what do I need and what do I get, not necessarily how can I enable you. And that's most of what I do every day is that. So to me, I'm extra sensitive to the fact that, like, man, if more people would just, give a 2%, I think we'd actually be filling in all the gaps. So what?
Well, yeah, you want to talk about esoteric conversations. I mean, that's it, right? Like that's the when you're relying on a on entrepreneurs and other people who the primary objective maybe is to make money, right? Because you're
Yeah.
starting a business. To want them to be looking out for the greater good is a big ask. So then you have reliance on government agencies and communities like that to create the structures and try to create the pathways for people and make those connections. And then there's a rub for some people about that there's a reliance on government to do those jobs. And I think there's some conversation that we could probably dive into about that. I think they both are necessary, but that's kind of what I was talking about earlier, just for a second, when I said there's also a responsibility that the entrepreneurs of this community have,
I
you know,
agree. Yeah.
and they all have to try to be supportive and step up and educate each other and recognize their important place in this burgeoning ecosystem. And when they can mentor others or be a guiding light, then I think that they should. That's just my opinion on it, and not everybody wants to take that mantle. But for those that do, we're very grateful because it's so necessary.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's people. Why I do a lot of things for free. I don't really get paid much. That's not a lament so much, but it's the fact. The fact is my motivations. Some people have asked, "Why are you doing this?" We had a pitch workout room last night. You're familiar?
Yeah.
So we had it was from 6 p.m. and I think we were finished around 10. We had several people. They didn't have a slide deck. They just get up and share their ideas. Some people are further along. I talked about the Fusion Center a little bit, but because I go last, so that way if there's nobody, I'll at least have something to talk about. But it was a good time and a lot of useful feedback and whatnot. I have it at the International Innovation Center downtown. So Don Jacobson is always enabling things
Hmm.
like this, and he's a wonderful asset. Hopefully, he gets a raise soon. but uh, but no, he's been wonderful, and having that space is wonderful. We have all the time. We started it at Tech Alley, which is itself a great resource that a lot of people don't uh, even know about. But these are things, Josh Levitt is basically an army of one driving
Right.
that. And so people don't always understand the value that it comes into being in front of them. And they go, "Oh, this is wonderful. Is there free food?" And you're like, "Oh man, there's a lot of stuff that went into this. The free food part should be, later, a secondary concern." So, but the point is that yes, I think the value will come back. The return on investment of time and care is difficult to quantify, right? So as you know this, you can't always put a dollar figure on some of this value, but it does emerge later. Uh, that was sort of what I was getting at earlier, right? Like not
Right.
everything has a tangible dollar value right now, but ultimately the Fusion Center, for example, I don't intend to make, I'm not going to be like the king of the Fusion Center, but it is an elevation of the resources available for people doing anything from bio to hardware to whatever. It's all the stuff you can't do on a laptop in a coffee shop, right? It's the thing
Right.
that enable transient businesses that are here visiting and whatnot. It's how to engage people that are in multiple areas now. The remote workers is a thing. It is what it is in the modernity age we are in. So the age of modernity, I should say. So yeah, the understanding of the big picture and how we can participate in it, I think, is something that we need to learn and keep saying out loud. So I do that, and it annoys people sometimes. Like I started a podcast or two, in fact, to talk about these things because uh, there have been comments that local media does not talk about that small. They talk about catalytic converters being stolen and unfortunate crimes of violence, and they talk about the MSG on the strip and which casino is buying which other, and so on and so on. But how often are they going to talk about the startup community, the efforts of small businesses to make our communities thrive? Not everybody's looking for a big exit. Sometimes you just want to operate a business, right? So those are the backbone of any economy is small
Right.
business. I read that somewhere. So yeah, I think that will be a continuing, and especially if Las Vegas is becoming a transformative, diverse economy. Not everybody is going to be in the service industry. Not everything is about tourism, and not everybody has to look out for just themselves if they understand the value that they can add, which will come back to them. Maybe that has to be demonstrated. I'm not sure. Maybe the young students are, as they matriculate, will bring some of that into the pool of talent.
I think
Maybe.
so. I mean, the Gen Z is so far anyway showing themselves to be very entrepreneurial, more entrepreneurial than uh, millennials, and more entrepreneurial than Gen X.
Hey, that's
So,
me.
me too. But they're proving to be more entrepreneurial, and I think this is a whole nother conversation actually that we could dive into separately. But right there's an interesting relationship that dynamic that's happening between employers and the next generation of employees, and the next generation of which my daughter is 18, and so I feel like I have a front row seat, especially also because we have a lot of student interns from the university in our office that we get to work with, dynamic young people, just really smart, and also they've learned a lot by observing these older generations and the way they've done things and the way they've lived their lives. They see lessons from right? Slaving away at jobs that people don't necessarily love and spending most of their life engaged in drudgery, right? Working just to make a paycheck and then support a
Sure.
life and going back and just it's a hard life without, in their view, a whole lot of benefits. People get, maybe a week or 2 weeks of vacation in a year. And then the rest of the time it's tough, right? That's how they see it. And they see their parents in debt and fighting to be able to afford things and keep up with inflation and so on. And the feedback from these young people is that they don't want to live that life. So I think an interesting result of that is that they are deciding, what do I like to do? What am I good at? What do I enjoy spending my time doing? How do I make money at that? And not as much, how do I make money at that going to work for a big company, although some young people are okay and are looking for that. But there's a big number of them who say, how do I make money being self-employed doing this work, whatever it is I love?
Right. Right.
And I'm rooting for them. I'm rooting so hard for them because I feel like it's the best of both worlds, right? It's oh, my parents especially, they look at that and they're like, oh, they mockingly talk about work-life balance as though it's some sort of, spoiled luxury, and which is sort of sad, right? Because these are our lives that we're talking about too. I mean, there's a quality of life issue that is real. And but you also, so you have to work and you have to make money and feed your family, and I think that an older generation looks at the younger generation and thinks they're focused on the wrong priorities, and I think the younger generations look at the older generation and says the same thing. And I'm hoping that this younger generation sort of figures out a great way to balance that a little bit more. It's going to be wonderful for human beings, right? In general, find work that you love and that inspires you, and be in somewhat of control of how that what your trajectory is, because you're running your own company or self-employed. Those I think are really valuable things. And even if they eventually go to work for a company, I don't know about you, but some of the best employees that I have ever had were people with entrepreneurial experience, because they realized that it's not just one hat that gets the job done. It's everybody pitching in and kind of just, helping out wherever they can, and seeing holes, trying to manage it from a more holistic perspective. So I think that these young people who are taking this entrepreneurial path will even be great members of a larger group, should they choose to do that at some point.
I agree. And to your point about being entrepreneurial, we've had this ongoing discussion about the modern day Silicon Valley, and one of somebody you've met, and she's at the roundtable, and we talk. She's working on the SRC, and she has a hacker house project. So Evelyn, hi Evelyn.
Yeah.
She she and I have discussed this. You cannot move to Silicon Valley and be an entrepreneur anymore. Um,
Right.
you can't just go and start, like when I moved there in 1993. We already established that I'm old, so I'm even older than Jamie.
Yeah. Wow, you're
So
really old.
I know.
I
Yeah, okay. Anyway,
tease, I tease.
I have been told, yes, someone who will remain nameless suggested, do you live in a retirement home? And I was like, no. But so yeah, when I moved to Silicon Valley, you would, and I lament this sometimes, by the way, because when you'd be there, you would say, I would, if you were sitting in a coffee shop and said, I have a startup idea, people would hush a little bit and they'd be like, what possibility, a thing, an interesting possibility emerging right here. And I don't see that so often. I think people are very focused on what they're doing and they don't pay attention, or they're not intrigued, at least. That's a broad generalization, so that, that's not universally true, but I just see, and in Silicon Valley, so Evelyn was just there for unfortunate reasons, but she had to go back for some stuff. And she said the feeling is just so, you got to work for a big company. If you are going to have a startup, you better already have some funding and some traction, because you're not going to go there to get seed money. You got to have something established, and you're basically moving to Silicon Valley with your startup because you're moving to Sandhill, or your VC is there, and you're already getting a B round or something. So it's a totally different culture than it was. And I think what we have here now, and I'm being honest, we're not there yet. We're not at the point where people are going, oh, this is like, there's a buzz in the air, or however you want to look at it. So all the things you've talked about are potential, I think, but we're not quite at we're going to be the next Silicon Valley. And as you know, I think we should not be doing that. But if we can become a better Las Vegas, part of that will certainly be fueling this energy. That doesn't make sense. Fuel is energy, but enabling us to make these things happen if people want to, and then fomenting that want. So all you just said, a lot of young people are entrepreneurial, and that'd be great as long as they know how to make that happen. Some of the SRC ideas, going to SBDC eventually, mentorship. I spoke to Jason LeDuc again. I'm sure Jason's listening, so hi, Jason. There's an entire veterans community here, as we know. He's running Veterans in Tech, VIT. He's one of the people doing it. And I said, there's a whole cadre of older veterans here that have military / business / some entrepreneurial experience. They could be helping a lot. And it's not SCORE. I've gone to SCORE, by the way, and the advice was interesting, but it wasn't current, right? It wasn't. So I was like,
Right.
nah, this wasn't really helpful. But people who understand the value of volunteering and the showing up to things and thinking in terms of systems and bureaucracy of government and military hierarchies and whatnot, but just at least their insights. And he was like, I didn't even make that connection. So we literally, during his presentation at Tech Alley, I said, what about the veterans helping? And he's like, that's a good idea. And it's not my idea. It's like a thing. It should just be happening already. So I think we aren't quite there yet, in my opinion, just from having been in Silicon Valley in those early days. And again, Silicon Valley started in 1950. So I was only there 40 years later.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of that has to do with some education opportunities there, education of a couple of communities. One, the news and reporting and journalism community here locally,
Yes.
but we're seeing an uptick in that. There's a couple of specific business reporters who are really going after it and trying to share that information. I think that educates the public, right, and lets them understand that this is a more normal thing, because there's a little bit of wariness, right? Like there's a known risk factor that people associate with startup, and it feels maybe a little scary, especially if you don't know how to judge whether something's a viable new company or whether it's not, and just everything feels very risky. And that leads to the next group of people that I think we're really working on educating, and we need to continue to do it, which are the investor community here locally. It's a big real estate investment communities. There's money here, and there are people who are interested in making money on their money, but it hasn't traditionally gone to things like investing in companies and in high growth companies.
Right.
So to re-educate some of um, our investor community in Southern Nevada will be critical to catalyzing some of that energy that you're talking about, where people are overhearing something. Oh, what? This could be an opportunity, right? Because now they're primed to even recognize those things as opportunities.
Yeah. And so as you say, the investment and the local media and the participants, the talent pool also has to be charged up a little bit. I had a conversation. I've had multiple conversations about companies looking for for talent to hire here, and that's a little hurdle to get over. Is that people just don't see like And I will quote from 10 years ago, but I will quote Rama Venkat. He said it's hard to get people to stay for an engineering degree at UNLV when you can go become a valet parker, make six figures down the street. And I'm not saying that's still 100% true, but I wonder sometimes about the awareness of opportunity that is found in chaos. And I have a little trope that I use. If there's chaos and you don't see opportunity, but you only see the chaos, maybe entrepreneurialism is not for you.
Yeah. Well, that's been the classic conundrum in Las Vegas since I was young, right? You can go to the university and get your degree and then get onto a path where you hope that you'll make whatever the income level is, or whatever, however you're going to determine success for yourself. But if it's financial, then the reality was for a lot of young people, you could, instead of getting a degree, go and park cars or serve cocktails or be a dealer, which are all very fine paths, right? The trouble with those paths is there seems to be a limit to the progression that you can have in your career, right? So you
Right.
get to a place where you make good money early on, but then, advancing beyond that stage to making more money or growing in your career, there's a lot of limitations there. And so that's really the reason that we're so aggressively seeking external industries that have a higher base wage rate and more potential for career pathways for people. That's why we're so ambitiously trying to recruit them to the Valley, so we can create more of those opportunities for the young people and make that more commonplace, right? Like, because if there's only a handful of those jobs and there's only a handful of people that know about it and are exposed to it, but if in every neighborhood across the valley, they can be exposed to people who have careers in a diverse range of fields, that bodes well for the next generation because they can see a whole lot of options that maybe, younger generations in this city weren't even exposed to.
I agree. And I think I don't know if so my parents are both entrepreneurial. So I was kind of, you know, doomed. Uh, so there was never a question. I always wanted it. I wasn't even told, but I was like, of course I'm going to college. My sister's an attorney. I'm an engineer of ill repute, probably, but the the opportunities we built for ourselves were based on our parents. Both, they both said, "What do you want to do, and what do you need to do to get there?" And mine was, "I want to go to Harvey Mudd College," and so I did. My sister went to, she was going to go to Georgetown. She went to U of A Law because she wanted to get back closer to home. But the fact is, I don't know if that drive in the younger people I see and deal with is, there's this whole like, oh, you don't need to go to college, just watch YouTube videos, which I believe is completely and totally incorrect. As I always say, my doctor said the same thing. I don't know if that's a good idea, but there's a reason. There is a reason to go to school, and as Mark Twain says, don't let your classes get in the way of your education. Part of that dynamic is what you are building in the way of relationships and how to work with people and collaborate, which is, I think, a weakness here in my observation. Just there's a, I'm generalizing, but the Innovate for Vegas Foundation that I'm the director of, it's volunteer based, and I often hear like, why don't we just use an existing thing? Like, well, innovation is about not doing that. It's about figuring out how to make something that works, not necessarily making something work around something else, right? So better methods, or the learning experience, or the collaboration, and these are all upsides that sometimes I get pushback, like, they don't say, I do, but it's too much work, or why do this? And I don't know if that inventor drive is present. And another anecdote, when I lived in Sunnyvale, California, there was no local media, which was, I'm not saying we have no local media here, but in a city of 120,000 at the time, there was no paper sourced locally. It was owned by a different company, and there was one reporter, and she didn't live in Sunnyvale. So a friend of mine and I started Radio Sunnyvale, podcasting, and we were the only people talking to city council. I'd go to city council meetings. We would talk to people at the homeless shelter and like, how'd you get here? We talked to small business owners, man on the street, woman on the street. And the person that launched the Stanford radio station approached us about putting up antenna and having an AM radio station, which it was 2008. So we were like, I might not be able to pay for that. But the fact is, I think entrepreneurial thinking has to be about, how do you make things happen if they aren't already? And so that's why I think the city, and that's why a bridge or some sort of cohesion between the entrepreneurs who see these things and want to enable and fix them or address them, and the city who has the resources but may not have the awareness or hands-on, there has to be more communication and more enabling. Like, yes, I see what you mean. We should enable that. There was a discussion the other day about business licenses for veterans and other underserved communities, a discount to enable them to start their businesses. Apparently, it's an offer that's been made. It's an offer that's been accepted. And then the following month, the offer is made again. And like, well, yeah, we said yes already. Let's do it. And they're like, okay, well, are you sure? And so without the connection of a cause and effect, or what is the key result that we're looking for in this objective, there's just these disconnects. So I think if we start a little bit more of a cohesive drive, with an understanding of what this over here will lend to that over there. It may not happen the same day, but enabling more business licenses for underserved communities. Yeah, I don't know. I could keep talking about this for hours, but I'll leave it there for today. But yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity for people to understand what's going on here, and it starts. The saying about planting a tree, right?
What is it?
The best time to plant a tree or to educate a student about our entrepreneurial ecosystem is today. The second best time is today. The best time was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So I totally botched that. Well, I'll clean it up in post, as they say. No, I won't. No edits. But yeah, I think that there's just a education component is going to be vastly important, and it starts when you're you gotta unprogram kids to think that I can't do this or I should do that. It's what do you want to do and what interests you, and then pursue that and enable it as much as possible. And that's where you end up with people thinking somebody should fix that. I'm going to fix it, and then I did fix it, and now I'm a unicorn and I'm rich.
The dream, the big dream.
Yeah, although everybody talks about exits too much, and I don't know if they really consider what that means. But yeah, how about just finding success and satisfaction with what you want to do and doing it? That'd be okay. Maybe investors don't like that, but people do.
Right.
I will say I was also told one time that I think too much about history, so I will quote George Santayana. I do this all the time. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. That's why we're doing the Downtown Project retrospective. It's why people like Jamie, who've been around, who've watched all the things change, are able to comment on evolution and revolution going on here, rather than trying to be like another city. I'm sure you're trying to make Vegas, your home, a better place, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So even me, an interloper, I can have a similar goal and try to do the same thing. And I know a lot of people are trying to do that. So hopefully discussions like this will add to that direction.
I hope so. I mean, Las Vegas, I just said this to a startup founder earlier this week, because their concern was, we're outsiders. I'm afraid we're always going to be outsiders, and they were lamenting that they felt like an outsider. And I can say this, that maybe we do need to improve our processes and our communications so that we can welcome more people into the system and the ecosystem, and point them to the right resources. But I mean, Las Vegas, if nothing else, has been built on the back of outsiders.
Absolutely.
Everybody who comes here is from somewhere else. And as a native, I can say that, yeah, there's some gripes where people say, don't bring whatever, bad habits or bad principles and policies you had from wherever you came from. Don't bring them to our state, whatever. There's always that kind of commentary. But for the most part, we're grateful for all of the talent and the diversity that's come here from everywhere else, and helps us add to what we're trying to grow here, right? We need the expertise and the experience, and all of the other perspectives that come from different areas of the country, and previous experiences as startup founders and so on. That's all so important to add to our recipe here. So I say that to people who are coming from the outside. This is a great environment to come in and be an outsider. We roll out the red carpet and try to find all the ways that we can be supportive. Maybe we need to do a better job of directing people to the right places to get started with that. But we do a damn good job of connecting people within the resource network that we do have.
So maybe one idea would be like a center for resources for startups,
Hey, maybe that would be a great idea.
or maybe in other order. Yeah, and your point is well taken. And don't worry, it's already been an hour and 20, so we'll wrap it up because Jamie's got thousands of emails to get back to. But we that's just never going to go away. Sorry, that's my favorite. But the nature of this place is so transient, which people observe a lot. Like, oh, you never know if they're going to leave, which is why exits, I think, should be a term used gingerly. But I think the fact that there are 40 million people coming here is an opportunity. I think it's often not leveraged to its utmost, as far as like, what. By the way, okay, anecdotally, again, the Generator Accelerator program, which is a mouthful, one of their members of their cohort for the end of the year last year I'm totally spacing on his name, but he had the collagen tea, right? Not a tech startup. So I met with him in a mentor swarm, I think they called it. So we had a Zoom call when he was just getting here, and we talked for 20 minutes. First question. Well, he was from Toronto, so they have a smart city there. That's another story. Sidewalk Labs and whatever. So Vegas cannot do what they did, but he was launching this, or he's launched. He already has this product. He came here with his collagen tea, which you would sell to spas, right? So I said, so you're going to walk up and down the strip and deliver your product to different spas at the resorts, and then your customers will come from all over the world, and and he's like, you got it, which he did, and he sold through all of his products. He's like, now I got to deal with more production. So he totally grabbed that opportunity, which is free exposure to millions of people who might 1% might be like, hey, yeah, I'll try your thing. So I think that's a bridge that has to be built as well as all these people visiting Vegas. And having been a traveler as I was, everybody thinks Vegas is the strip, but there's more to it than that. So that is another hurdle. Yeah. So that was too easy. You just agreed with me. There's no argument, nothing.
Oh, I completely agree, right? I think we have agreement on this, which is it's not hard to agree on these things, right?
Yeah.
We see
Yeah.
them. I think
Always
the
good ideas.
disagreement comes on solutions and what's the right or whatever approach, but I think we all see the same perspective and I don't think we're actually all that far off, most of us, from knowing what the right next steps are.
Yeah. Honestly, I think the right next steps are to not to wait for somebody else. That's what it is. So
Agreed.
the people who have the energy and the gumption or chutzpah, if you if you like, if you can turn somebody should fix that, like I said, into and some entrepreneurs will say, well, I'm too busy, but you can certainly connect people or say it out loud, or you can play a role even if you don't have the time. So, and like I said, there was no local media in my startup, in Silicon Valley City, Sunnyvale, and so we just did it, and it was pretty successful for what it was in the time, and we have only more opportunity to do that. So, anyway, any closing remarks? Was this bad or really bad of a use of your hour and 26 minutes?
No, of course it was a great use of time and I always enjoyed talking with you. I think that we probably could go off onto 100 rabbit holes and tangents together.
Yeah.
So I think I would like to congratulate us on doing a pretty good job of holding it together.
Yeah. Well, there was no Thai food here, so that would have made it either better or depending on how spicy it was. Um, but yeah, so very enjoyable as always. I've had an opportunity to speak to a few interesting people so far as we get this started, and I'm hoping we'll have more. And by the way, podcasting is super easy, really. There was no real setup for you, right? Except for the minor.
No, super easy, very easy.
So a couple of people said, "How come you aren't doing video?" And I said, "Video is a lot of work. It's a lot of equipment. Not, I mean, you can set up a webcam at your desk, but to make it worth doing, you actually have to prepare, and you have to have a nice background that isn't my electronics crap all over behind me." So everybody always comments on that. What is in all those boxes? I'm like, it's tons of electronic sensors, and I haven't even began to do my hardware hacking yet. But so, yeah. Uh, Audio podcasting, more people should do it. There should be more discussion, more discovery, more ideation, sharing ideas. I think that will go a long way. So, and next up will be our local media challenge to get them more in tune. But
Yeah,
thanks for
I
taking
love
the
that.
time today. Appreciate
Hey,
it.
thanks for having me on.
And this is only part one. There will be parts 2 through 8 at some point. Who knows? But everybody I've talked to so far on both of this and the Let's Innovate for Vegas podcast, it's always the end of the first part of a discussion, clearly, because there's a lot of things to talk about, and interesting people tend to be interesting.
Well, there you are. So to be continued.
I would like that very much, and I hope everybody listening will feel the same. So thank you, Jamie Schwartz. Now we know who this is, finally, at long last. Find Jamie on an airplane traveling around the world, not hanging out in Vegas quite as much lately from what you've told me, but when she's around, definitely seek her out, say hello, and visit the SBDC and start your business.
Absolutely. Yes.
And on that note, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.